while we're waiting for David?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Go ahead. Just keep
are,
going.
are we ready right now?
No, go
I
ahead.
don't have. Okay, long story short, I told David already. Long story short, fucking this brother and sister graduated a few years ago. The brother graduated like 3 years ago. The sister like last year, and she stopped by to say hi to us during lunch. And long story short, the brother's got a new girlfriend. The brother's like a poster child of like the carpentry class. He's a church kid. Blah blah blah. Showed me a picture. The girlfriend's very large. Okay.
She's fat.
Yeah, and he looks bigger than himself too. And then like one of the teachers was like, "Oh, how'd they meet?" And the sister was like, and I was just like, at a buffet, and like everyone's just dying laughing. And then anyway, that was like Thursday or Friday of last week. Monday, he is at the gym with his girlfriend signing up for a gym membership.
Damn.
So she definitely told her brother my comment, but sometimes I gotta be a villain. Sometimes you gotta be a villain, dude. Like for real, like he's at the gym. I saw him. I was like, "Yo, what up, dude?" I was like, "Good to see you here. Hell yeah, blah blah blah." And then we made eye contact, and like I could tell in his eyes, he was like, "Yeah, I'm here because like you said that buffet comment, you know." But we didn't talk about that, you know. We didn't talk about that.
You single-handedly just changed the course of their entire life.
With 4 words.
When it comes to the gym,
questions, 3 words.
Dude, if you're 20 years old and you're fat, like you're trying, you know? So like you should fix it.
You're trying.
Yeah, you are. Like it's so easy to be skinny at 20. So like if you're fat, you're trying. So you should try the other way.
I take offense to that, bro. I was fat.
You were trying, bro. You know?
I was
you were trying.
Yeah.
You were trying.
Oh yeah. Yeah. All right. Do you guys want to start?
Sure.
Okay.
A
note. We'll wrap up probably like 5:45, 5:40. Nadine and I are going over to her brother's to see his new house at 6:15, 6:30. So it'll be a short one today. I don't foresee us getting through the entire chapter. We can talk about the preface and go aphorism for aphorism. But since we're recording, I texted Dev. I don't know if it was late last night or early this morning. Like, hey, dude, we have to record this because it's so dense. I was reading it, and I was like, man, I really need some help. I couldn't find the bronze. I was looking for the bronze on YouTube to see if he covered any of this.
Bronzer.
I found this one called Wietgeist. Is WIETGEIST. So Wietgeist, something like that. And it's another YouTube channel that goes through it.
It sounds like a fucking like Nazi handle.
Wietgeist. So I've found other resources. I've been using ChatGPT to help with interpretation as well, and it's been helping. I'll kind of show you guys what I've been doing because I think it's pretty cool, and I kind of want to discuss that as well. But let's start with David. You chose this book. You sent us a list of 4 books, and we ended up agreeing on this one. Why did this one make your list? What about it was interesting to you or like appealed to you?
Well, after reading Zarathustra, I think I've seen it, like, you know, in some of the references that I looked up to understand Zarathustra, that this is a good book to read before or just as like one of his most known books.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I wanted to read it. I mean, Zarathustra was a banger and a lot of good stuff. And, you know, even though this one isn't a fictional philosophical story, I was really curious to read something that kind of just came from his own, I think, the way you know, his aphorisms and the way he was like describing things. So yeah. And then specifically, I mean, Beyond Good and Evil, the title alone, like, how do you squander like morals, you know, like how do you think in that term, or how do you think in that lane, you know, without morals? And I feel like that's what he's attempting to do, and it's audacious for sure, you know. So I wanted to
Well, good.
Audacious.
This guy's vocabulary exploded upon reading this book.
Audacious.
Yeah.
Devin too. He texted the group chat. It was like I was like, what the fuck?
What did I say?
No, David. Excuse me, Devin. Devin messaged the chat. And he was like, upon reading this 3 times, and
Dude.
I was like, sorry. Yeah.
I didn't tell you, John, but I think it was last night. I microdosed and then on some shrooms, and I just read this book with like French jazz playing. I was on straight philosophical mode, bro. It was pretty sick. Not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
So looked up a lot of the Latin and French terms.
Yeah.
Really interesting stuff.
Yeah, this when we were texting about it and Devin was like, oh, the first chapter is only 20 pages, maybe we should add like another chapter. I was like, oh, wait a second, because
Yeah.
remember, like with us folks at Arthur Show, we would read like 4 sub chapters or 4 parts at a time, and that would lead to like a 2-hour plus long conversation. And I think that's going to end up being the case as well with this book. Just reading it, getting interpretation, looking up resources, using ChatGPT for like interpretation and breakdown. That has like each aphorism's like a ton of dense information inside of just like 12 to 18 sentences. But for the people that haven't read Beyond Good and Evil or haven't heard of it, it's structured in a series of aphorisms. And aphorisms are concise statements of a scientific principle. Excuse me, I just had dental work done, so my my top left side of my lip ain't working. But an aphorism is a concise statement of a scientific principle, typically by an ancient classical author. So they're like stanzas, almost like poetry in a sense. So yeah, they're like 12 to 18 sentences typically.
Each one kind of has its own like topic.
Right. Yeah. And each one, it's almost like Marcus Aurelius in a sense.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Where it was like just those stanzas.
Marcus Aurelius.
And so each one of these is numbered and often relatively short, but is densely packed with meaning. So before we jump into the preface, I wanted to ask you guys like what your thoughts are so far. What do you guys think?
Well, it seems like so far he is taking like different like philosophies or ideals or like religions and like kind of summarizing them and pointing out their flaws.
Yeah.
In like a quick and concise way. He seems like he's like as if he was a critic and these were movies and he was leaving reviews for each philosophy or religion. That's like how it reads so far.
Yeah.
I kind of don't know what's going on, if I'm being honest. It's like all of like, I mean, I get what he's saying, but it's just like a lot of it just like repetitive about the fact of like the will to power or the will to this or the free will or whatever, Yeah. And it's hard for me to kind of distinguish. In the beginning, some philosophies stick out very strong and like it's fun to play around with them, but a lot of them I think are like undistinguishable from each other in a lot of ways. So it seemed kind of like repetitive and it was easy for me to get lost.
Yeah. Lots of reading, rereading, and then rereading.
Reread. It's a Yelp review of all of philosophy.
Yeah.
And he's leaving it 1 star.
I mean, so far this first chapter, that's kind of what it was like, yeah, a review of like all philosophies of all like the big ones, I guess it seemed like,
When you guys are reading, or I don't know, the way I was kind of like reading some of the sections, he was like kind of like characterizing like Plato, who were the other, there's like Socrates. I feel like he was kind of characterizing them the way that the people that ended up back in Zarathustra's cave, like the magician, the shadow, all those people. I feel like he was kind of like mentioning those characteristics of like why they were almost supermen or achieved like the Ubermensch, but they were still flawed. And so I kind of see it that way too.
Yeah. And it's important to note that this book came out right after Zarathustra. It was the very next book that he wrote. So I can imagine that some of the things we read in Zarathustra are going to be basically transferred over to this because he's kind of further expounding. on those ideas that he wrote in that book.
Like he called, he compared one like way of philosophizing as like a magician too. They kept repeating something, you know, and I was like, okay, there's a magician in Zarathustra, so
Yeah.
he's on something, you know what I mean?
For sure. So I wanted to continue that conversation about what you guys thought individually, but I think it's important to note that Beyond Good and Evil is divided into several parts. It has 10 chapters. Each of them deal with different aspects of Nietzsche's philosophy. So a brief overview of part 1, which we're going to be discussing some of today, is titled On the Prejudices of Philosophers. So Nietzsche begins by critiquing past philosophers, calling out the biases they have built into their systems of thought, often rooted in moral and metaphysical assumptions. So back in the day, philosophy was called metaphysics. And I don't know if you guys have heard of the podcast Philosophy Now. No? So Philosophy Now, it's a breakdown of philosophy from the beginning, and it starts with metaphysics. And it's basically the pursuit of truth. And so that's kind of what he's attacking in this, or arguing against in this chapter. So it was a pretty interesting, to say the least. Let's continue with kind of our thoughts on it. Devin, your thoughts so far?
I would definitely lead with critique for sure, with understanding his perception of how philosophy has been interpreted up until this point. I think there's a section, I think in section 4 is really where I kind of define how he breaks down good and evil. We can get into it, but I think it's the main talking point that he represents is like the critique of you can't have good without the evil. And I think my interpretation of what he's saying is a lot of these philosophers miss the point. They miss the mark of like, you, in order to get to your, let's just say, paradigm, you have to acknowledge the opposite side of that. And I think he does, I don't know, up until what I can understand, like chapter 6 is where I start to lose it. Is that's what he's really breaking down, is the prejudices of philosophy.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because our last book, Sapiens, talks about, calling empires purely good or purely evil is a flawed sense, a flawed way to look at history. And what he's saying, and what and what Nietzsche's saying in this is like, ultimately, what we perceive as good or evil is interconnected. Yeah, in a sense. And so, like with Sapiens, the same thing applies. So we're starting to see another common thread in a lot of these books we read, is that things aren't purely good or purely evil. When we're talking about spectrums in culture, it's important to note that good and evil is also a spectrum, and actually it's pretty much a circle.
Yeah.
All right. Well, for me, what I would say, an interesting quote that stood out to me was the first line of the preface. It says, "Supposing that truth is a woman, what then? Is there not ground for suspecting that all philosophers, insofar as they have been dogmaticists, have failed to understand women? That the terrible seriousness and clumsy importunity with which they have usually paid their address to truth have been unskilled and unseemly methods for winning women? Certainly she has not allowed herself to be won, and at present every kind of dogma stands with sad and discouraged mien." So he's comparing, or like likening, philosophy or truth itself to women. And all men know that trying to understand a woman is a fleeting process. It always changes, and it's kind of enigmatic and basically an impossible task. And so that's kind of what they're starting with. This is a preface written by Sils Maria Upper Engadine in 1885. And so in 1885, understanding women was impossible. In 2024, understanding women was impossible. All the way throughout human history, understanding women has been purely an impossible task. And he's, it's likening philosophy to that. And so it was a bold statement.
I thought that was interesting. Yeah. He calls in Zarathustra the two women dancing in the forest. It was
wisdom.
One was wisdom and one was I can't remember.
Something like that. Wisdom and knowledge. Something like that. Continue.
That made me think of that when he started like personifying like the truth as a woman.
Yeah.
and trying to like win her over, or, like figure her out and stuff like that.
Right. Choosing one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Definitely. All right. All right. So with section number 1, aphorism number 1, I kind of wanted to walk through it and discuss it kind of not in a line by line sense, but idea by idea maybe. And so I had ChatGPT help me out a lot on this one. And let me scroll on up to it real quick. Before I get into it, I want you guys, somebody here, to attempt to describe what is happening in aphorism number 1. Break down the message and tell me what. Who's gonna be the bold soul?
If you give me a second, I gotta familiarize myself with that.
Yeah, hell yeah. And if you're watching and you're hearing the silence, go ahead and drop a comment down below what you think the first aphorism was about, and then see if maybe if we agree with you.
All right. I mean, like, I just skimmed it again after reading it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot to unpack, but
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he starts off the will to truth, okay? And then he talks about the hazardous enterprise, the famous truthfulness to which all philosophers have hitherto spoken with respect. It's pretty much being like, I mean, potentially the origin of like all philosophy is quote unquote the truth. Like, even to me today, in today's time, like, one of my most important principles is to like first try to like search for the truth and to respect truth, you know?
Yep.
And like that's why when I see like the media playing as like an agent to nullify the truth, to persuade people to vote a certain way, it upsets me, because it's like that's like philosophy 101, that we should be seeking and yearning for the truth and to like respect the truth. So he's talking about like philosophy number 1, like what is the truth? And he goes like, well, like, one, who even gave us this idea of like what is truth, what is untruth, like what is truthful to you, what's not truthful to someone else? Can people have two opposing ideas and still like be a part of the same reality? Why didn't we become like obsessed with the idea of untruth and like ignorance? Why is it all about truth? And so, and then yeah, so I think that's my summary of it. I think about truth. Where does it come from? Why are we obsessed with it? Can there be like different truths? Yeah.
All right. Anything to add?
Well, I like that summary, because like there's a sentence he says, granted that we want the truth, why not rather untruth and uncertainty, even ignorance? And he puts question marks after each one of those statements. Like, it's how about showing us the full spectrum of what you're, I guess, bringing to the table as information for us to decide, as like people reading your information, right? Rather than just giving us this is truth, this is fact, giving us the whole and letting us decide, and not putting your stamp on your dogma or whatever it may be. So that was a good summary.
I think the end where he starts talking about the risk of raising the idea of like where truth comes from, that there is a risk for, I guess, even like thinking about getting to the truth in that way on the other side of like ignorance, or what untruths are. Like, why haven't we gone down that path, you know? But also there's a risk in not going down that, because there's more truth to be learned out of ignorance, or what are untruths.
Well, think about this line: the science has been settled. You know, like the people that hold the truth when it came to like health, you know, they were like, the science has been settled and this is the truth. And like they wouldn't even allow the existence of quote unquote the untruth to like live in the same reality as them. But ironically, that the untruth, the science was not settled, and like what they were claiming was truthful was actually untruthful, but they held the power of what was truthful and not truthful, you know?
Yeah.
So like
Mhm.
like that's just today we still battle these things, like what is the truth, who holds the truth, like the truth is still important. So it's probably one of our like our original like, you know, philosophies, you know, trust with other people, the truth, right?
Yeah. Who decides what's true, and then what do they do with it? And then what? How do we still allow for maybe opposing ideas to exist that we might not deem as true culturally, even let's say it comes to health. How do we still allow those to exist? Especially when something like the statement that the science is settled.
Yeah, it like removes the whole scientific process.
Yeah, it's ignorance ultimately, because science is like it's like a living document.
Yeah.
It's changing all the time. And so
The
to say
sci-
that something settled, especially something that's a living document, it's foolish,
like if science can be replicated like multiple times and it
Right.
have the same outcome, then you can like confidently say that you're 99% sure the science is settled. But like you could find out new information, like we could find a new field of science, and like when it comes to like physics and stuff, like the Einstein, like E equals mc squared, like most of it works, and so we started doing these other things, and then it doesn't
Right.
work anymore. So like for the most part, you can say, okay, we've tested this theory, this hypothesis, and it comes out the same conclusion every time, so we can almost for certain say it's settled. But still, there is a possibility that something like an anomaly could happen that could like make us rethink of what we think of science,
Right.
But that'd be like a catalyst. That'd be something. So, and especially to say the science was settled on something that was so new at the time, just shows like the uncorrect power of the used truth, of willing truth, I guess.
Yeah, and there's
Unresponsible, maybe.
There's classifications in science for these things. Like there's the difference between theory and law. And in science, theory is something that you can repeat over and over and over again. Theory of relativity, Einstein's theory of relativity. You can repeat this over and over and over again. And let's say it's 99% correct. We cannot call it a law until it is 100% correct, and it happens over and over and over again, which is why there's so little scientific laws that we have in our current existence. Most of these things are considered theories. And so it's important to keep that in mind when it comes to hearing like the science is settled. That, okay, now you're basically saying that it is a law in science, right? And when somebody comes and says that it's a law, you should be highly skeptical, because it's so few things that occur in nature and in science that are repeatable and can be deemed laws. And it takes years and years and years to actually be able to do that, and multiple different scientists and multiple different experiments and data sets. So, the pursuit to truth, basically modern day science is built on that. And originally science started as philosophy. It was somebody asking questions like, why does the moon exist and how do we get there? Then we birthed science out of philosophy, just simply asking questions, and pursuing truth. So I think that there's some benefits to the desire of trying to understand what is true and what is false. So I'm interested to see Nietzsche's argument going forward as to like, okay, well, maybe if that's the wrong approach, what does he suggest for an approach? Does he pose any solutions in his like philosophical paradigm? So I'm excited to hear kind of what he proposes moving forward. So I want to share a little bit about what I got from ChatGPT along with some of my thoughts. So here's some of the interpretation that ChatGPT provided. So the will to truth is the desire to seek and know the truth. Nietzsche sees this as central to the work of philosophers throughout history. Nietzsche acknowledges that philosophies have historically held truthfulness in high regard, which is kind of what we mentioned before. He is hinting that the drive to seek truth is not as straightforward or innocent as it appears. Humanity has been pursuing philosophical questions for a long time, but the exploration has barely scratched the surface. Nietzsche is pointing out the unresolved, often unsettling nature of the quest for truth. Nietzsche poses a deeper question. Why do we desire truth? Philosophers have lingered over this question of motivation for some time, but have been stumped by an even more foundational question. Nietzsche is challenging the assumption that truth-seeking is inherently noble or rational. He's implying there may be unconscious, irrational forces at work in our pursuit of truth.
Yeah, I think the pursuit of truth is not inherent to every human, because I see it in my own life all the time. People, like, there's a term called like being a ostrich, because an ostrich is someone who hides their head in the sand, you know?
Yep.
So I think, you know, ignorance is bliss is like another like phrase that's like used oftenly. So I don't think it's inherent, but I think it's like maybe level one of like deeper thinking. You could even be like spiritual thinking, you know, whatever you want to call it. But it's at the very least like critically thinking. Critically thinking is like to be able to objectively assess like the situation in front of you. So but it's definitely not inherent to, like, I know tons of people who like they don't like to hear the truth. They actually think the truth is like racist or misogynistic or something.
Could I pose maybe devil's advocate, maybe steel man, the opposite side?
Sure.
So remember in Sapiens, he talks about new humanist religions.
Mm-hmm.
And how in some humanist religions, I forget what it's called, but secular humanism or secular liberalism, he talks about, above all else, even more important than natural laws is what's happening in the human brain. So only thing that would be true in that sense is what the person is feeling or thinking at the time. And I think this is what's different from, you know, the pursuit of truth in the sense that we're thinking about it. If that's true, and that's the paradigm that I hold, that the only thing that matters is what the person is thinking or feeling at the time, then what's the highest good to me is making sure that those are validated. Trans, Black Lives Matter.
Okay, that's like if you would take that same question, it's like, then ask them, okay, why are you feeling the reason, like, okay, so they're feeling X, whatever you're saying they're feeling, and
Right.
you're saying that's the truth. Then I would ask them, why are you feeling X? And
Okay.
then let's hear their reasons. Like, are their reasons untruthful, you know, or are their reasons validated? So those are different things. Like, are they like validated reasons, or are they like, or is it a stretch of the truth? You know, is it an exaggeration, or is it outright false? You know, like, for example, like people think that like Trump's gonna like outlaw abortion. Well, his last presidency, he took it away from the executive branch, so the executive branch can never touch it again. So like that's outright lie. You know, he says that they said that he's misogynistic. He just hired Susan Willis as his chief of staff, first woman ever in history to ever hold this position. So again, like, are they feeling the way that, I'm not saying that the way they're feeling is not true, because it's personal to them, but maybe the facts are causing the stir of emotion are unfalse, you know?
Yeah. You raise an interesting point. I was watching a YouTube video last night, and it's about, interestingly, it's about porn addiction. But I think what he's talking about in that video applies to many different things. He says it's all about building a house. And we want to build a strong foundation so when a wind comes, our house isn't knocked down. So when you relapse, that's when your house gets knocked down. So he says it's important to notice and pay attention when the wind comes, some sort of trial or tribulation or an urge, right? A really strong urge would be a hurricane. It's important to analyze why you're feeling that wind. Why is the hurricane here at this time? And I think that's the hardest part about trying to figure out addiction in general. But John, when you say, why are you asking X? I don't think a lot of people think about that. And it's a really hard enterprise, like to be like, okay, I'm feeling an urge, or I feel as though maybe I don't identify as a man. Instead of asking why, we now accept that as true because what I'm feeling and what I'm thinking is the truth based on a secular humanism idea. now other people have to capitulate to the way I feel and think. And
Yeah, but if you can't even capitulate like your own thoughts or your own emotions, like how dare you try to prescribe them to me? Like what a fucking selfish, naive thing to do.
I agree.
I was gonna say because that's what he tags onto the second chapter. Is it's sort of naive or it's foolish to think that if you're basing everything off the feeling that creates a truth, then you also have to recognize other people feel different things. And so there's this unlimited amount of feeling that goes on in the world where not everybody's going to see your truth because it's not backed by anything that's, I guess, scientific.
It's not their truth.
Yeah. So yeah. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. So it's even Nietzsche's. What he calls good or evil. It applies nowadays with that. Like what you determine as good or determine as evil, I might see it as the complete opposite. Right? Democrat, Republican, like you see these things in culture happening now,
Well, yeah, for
so
sure.
there's danger.
I just want to say, is someone like, for me personally, I love being sold on a good idea. I love being sold on a product too. Like, so the better you can communicate your idea, like the truth or whatever, like the more likely you're able to get people to your side. But like the truth is like the most flashy like thing on the market though, So if you're seeking the truth, I don't even have a complete thought. I'm sorry.
You're good. Keep thinking about it. I want to say that there's danger. There's danger in thinking that what the human thinks and feels is foundationally true. And what Nietzsche is arguing in this is that the pursuit of truth in philosophy is a misguided, it's a fundamentally misguided approach to philosophical questions or philosophy as a whole. And as we're seeing in culture nowadays, what people deem as true, other people might deem as false. And so maybe addressing philosophy in this way is an incorrect approach. And so,
just level one, like I think one of the things too is that like, maybe philosophy, and I know he's talking about different parts, but like kind of a combination of a lot of different things, like truth's like level one, truth so you can like operate in like reality, but like philosophy is like at a higher level because it's like it's thinking about how to think, because like you can already assess the board objectively, which is reality, so you can move on to higher level thinking, which is like how would I like to aim myself, how would I like to orientate myself with like the rest of the world, with like other players that also are like trying to figure out where they belong on the board,
Right.
But like level one is like you at least I need it. Like if you're a philosopher, not philosopher, if you're just a fucking normal human being, not incorporating like the respect and value of truth into your life, I mean, you're kind of not playing the game right,
Okay. All right, I'm going to continue here a little bit. So Nietzsche is skeptical toward the philosophical tradition that prioritizes truth without examining why. There might be situations where untruth or ignorance could offer benefits, casting doubt on the assumed superiority of truth seeking. So I'm wondering in what situation untruth or ignorance could offer benefits.
Easy. Okay, an example. Imagine you have a tyrannical government that, like, let's say a king that's like all powerful, and as a citizen, like you hear rumors that like the king is sick, or like there's actually like a rebellion growing or whatever, that lie could help you find the courage to like maybe like actually have a resistance against something tyrannical, that even though like if you look at the odds, like everything's stacked up against you, but like maybe a lie could help you like believe in something, which would then cause like maybe the tides to eventually turn, but like it starts as a lie, so
yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way. So you can build a building on top of, let's say, build a revolution or build a resistance on a lie.
Because
communism.
Like communism. Yeah, communism was built on a lie, and like in their terms, they thought it was good, but I'm just thinking like, like if you look at it on paper, like the facts, like how did America beat England, which was like the biggest empire of the world? It seems ludicrous, but they had to for real, like delude themselves enough to literally think they could take on like the most powerful thing in the world.
Right.
And they ended up winning because a lot of different variables.
Right.
But there was delusion in that thought process that they could win, you know?
Right.
And like propaganda, like there's like propaganda is like a use of that, you know, the Democrats use it, the Republicans use it, and like even then, like the propaganda of like England's not actually as strong as we think they are, or blah blah blah, like it's winnable,
Right.
you know.
Their tea is garbage.
Yeah, you know, like in the in sense of like that'd be a useful way, you know, or like this isn't a good way because I think it's wrong, but like a kid's animal dies, you're like he ran away. I think that's actually not good, but that's a way people lie, and like they think it's for the better, and like a simple naive way, you know.
Yeah.
Santa Claus is fake.
Santa Claus
Right.
is fake.
No, he's real.
Yeah.
It's a lie.
Yeah, I
we
mean,
tell
and
kids so they
identifying
can-
lies. So this truth versus lies thing, like British thought the truth was, or what should be true was that we're going to tax these things so that we can make some sort of, or gather some sort of benefit from our colonies. Americans identified that as a lie. Taxation without representation is not okay, right? So we identify there's some flaws in this truth. So there's some lies or there's omissions in this truth. And so what we need to do is to have a revolution and get representation in the British government or become our own entity.
A revolution. Yeah. So they
And
did.
so like identifying those things, again, another example of truth versus lies being like let's say a shaky ground, at least, to build a foundation.
We always need, there's a like an intrinsic, I don't want to say need, but out of lies, we need those lies in order to establish what the truth is.
Right.
We need ignorance in order to pursue truth.
Right, because then at some point you're going to hit a wall.
There has to be both.
Right, because at some point you're going to hit a wall and then you're going to be like, okay, well, this wasn't correct. Let's find out what was correct, right? And so ignorance or truth, truth or lies, both of them lead to the discovery of, actual foundational, that would be metaphysicians' idea of philosophy. Can you bring up the document on here? I want to share a screen because there's this tiny short video that I found because
I want to take a pee real quick.
Yeah. So Nietzsche introduces the idea that truth itself could be a problem, hinting that it may not be universally good or valuable. He uses the myth of Oedipus and the Sphinx to illustrate the mystery and potential danger in this inquiry. In Greek mythology, Oedipus solved the Sphinx riddle, but doing so led him to tragic self-knowledge. By comparing philosophers to both Oedipus, the questioner, and the Sphinx, the bearer of a dangerous secret, Nietzsche implies that the quest for truth might expose us to unsettling or even destructive revelations. He suggests that philosophy may carry its own risks, questioning who is truly in control, the philosopher seeking the truth or the truth itself confronting the philosopher. So in the document, there's a YouTube link there. Go ahead and click that. I didn't know anything about this Oedipus versus the Sphinx thing. I didn't even know where the Sphinx comes from, right? I know it's in Egypt, that picture there, if we could share screen. I didn't know anything about this story. So I looked it up a little bit and I wanted to figure it out because he's mentioning, well, philosophy could be Oedipus or it could be the Sphinx altogether. So go ahead and hit play. It's a short video. How long is it?
4 minutes.
Yeah, we'll cut it at some point here. We won't be watching the whole thing, so go ahead.
Of the Sphinx. In the shadowed valleys of ancient Greece, where gods and mortals play a dangerous game of fate, there lurked a creature more enigmatic than the night itself, the Sphinx. With the head of a human and the body of a lion, she posed a riddle that spelled doom for many. Welcome to the history realm, where we unravel the mysteries of the past.
Fake, by the way. The Sphinx isn't
Today we journey back to the mythological era of ancient Greece, a land where heroes and monsters were not just stories, but a part of life. Meet Oedipus, not just a prince, but a figure woven into the very fabric of Greek mythology, a man whose name would become synonymous with both greatness and the tragic workings of fate. His story begins in Thebes, a city gripped by fear and uncertainty. The Sphinx, a creature with the haughty head of a woman, the body of a lion, and the wings of an eagle, loomed over the city. She was not just a mythical beast, She was a symbol of impending doom,
She
casting
was
a
a
shadow as dark
hottie.
as the riddle she spun. This Sphinx, sent by the gods as punishment for a forgotten sin, posed a challenge that chilled the bones of the bravest warriors. Her riddle was not merely a question, but a death sentence for those who dared and failed. What walks on 4 feet in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 3 at night? She would ask. Her voice.
What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 3 at night? Guess.
Okay, give me a second. Which walks? 4 legs in the afternoon.
2 legs in four legs in the morning,
Okay.
two legs in the afternoon, and
Okay.
3 legs in the evening.
A human.
Why?
4 legs because we're laying down when we're sleeping. I don't know. I'm just taking a guess, by the way. two legs because we're standing up, and then 3 legs at night because you got a boner.
All right, Devin and David, let's hear your guess.
I don't know. Shit, is it an animal? Can I,
What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs
In the afternoon. And 3 legs at night. I don't know.
A dog with a broken leg.
I'm dead. All right, continue the video. I'm really impressed, John.
Voice a mix of malice and amusement. This riddle had claimed many lives, for each incorrect answer was met with the swift and merciless wrath of the Sphinx. Into this dire scene entered Oedipus, a prince with a burdened past and a prophecy looming over his future. His journey to Thebes was not just a travel across lands, but a march towards destiny. As he stood before the Sphinx, he was not only facing a challenge of wit, but also confronting his fate. The air was electric, charged with tension and fear, yet Oedipus stood undeterred. His life had been a tapestry of trials, each thread woven with the resilience and strength that now held him in good stead. If you haven't already, make sure to hit the like button.
Yeah, go check him out.
As Oedipus stood before the Sphinx, the silence was palpable. Oedipus, with the weight of many lost lives on his shoulders, pondered the riddle. The answer, when it dawned upon him, was as profound as it was simple. Man, in childhood, he crawls on all 4s. In the vigor of adulthood, he walks upright on 2 legs.
He's got
In
a
old
cane,
age, he leans on a stick, the 3rd leg that supports him. Oedipus solved the Sphinx's riddle quicker than a philosopher at a trivia night. The
Just wanna
Sphinx, a
say,
creature of
pause
enigma
it.
and malice,
Yeah,
found herself
John,
outwitted by the
I'm
sheer
really
power.
impressed, bro. You would have saved the entire village.
They
The
look.
reasoning was a little weird, but
Have you seen the bell curve graph where it's like the retards and the geniuses are actually like the same, and everyone in the middle is like actually the people who are like dumb?
yeah.
It's not that hard, guys. It was a riddle for man. I mean, I
Yeah,
was
bro.
wrong. I was wrong about reasoning, but I came to the same conclusion. So, like, I mean,
You got
the
bummed.
answer was still the right answer.
No, you're good, bro. I'm impressed. I was like thinking about it. I was like, wow, that's good.
That's an example of ignorance coming to the truth, dude. You know.
Yeah, I mean, hey, dude, it
Have you
works.
seen
Right?
that? Okay, it's like you're a math teacher, and like you're like, show me how you did it, and they see your work. You're like, how did you get the right answer? You're like, trust it, trust the process, trust the
No,
process.
a little bit more. All right.
Power of human intellect. In that moment, as she vanished into the ether, Thebes was liberated from her reign of terror. Oedipus had not just solved a riddle, he had unraveled a mystery as old as humanity itself. The onlookers, who had braced for the worst, now erupted in joy and disbelief. Their oppressor was gone, defeated not by sword or spear, but by the sharpness of a human mind. Oedipus, once a wandering prince, had etched his name into the annals of history. This moment of triumph, however, was laden with irony. Sophocles, the great Greek tragedian, would later immortalize Oedipus's story, highlighting how his intelligence, which had been his greatest weapon against the Sphinx, would lead him down a path of tragic discovery. In the unraveling of his own life's mystery, Oedipus would confront truths that would ultimately lead to his downfall. Oedipus's encounter with the Sphinx is not just a tale of triumph. It is a narrative rich with symbolism, reflecting the complexities of human life and the inexorable nature of fate.
When you look into the abyss, the abyss looks back. That's what he did when he looked at too much truth, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And so Nietzsche is using this example to describe physicians and philosophers and metaphysicians in their quest in philosophy.
Well, I don't get. Sorry. So what was like the not negative, but the like the outcome? There was a positive. They saved the city, but what was the other one?
The negative?
Yeah.
All right, so now you're in front of the village, right? And you just did this massive thing. You sent the Sphinx out. You answered truthfulness, right? You answered her riddle and you got it right. Now, in public perception, let's just say this is just one of the examples. Public perception, you are now the person who knows what truth is.
The ministry of truth.
And now you are looked at as a guy that has the answers. Okay, this
What a
guy now has
responsibility.
to answer. But you remember in the story of Moses, right?
Yeah.
We get to the desert, and he's the judge of all of the quarrels of the Hebrews.
Yeah, it's too much. It's too much.
It's too much, right? So Oedipus is now like Moses in that sense, where he's now the judgment of what's true, what's untrue, what's correct, and what's incorrect.
It's like he might have just gotten lucky, like, or like some people have their moments, you know, but like he's not like the like the minister of truth. Like he could still be wrong sometimes. He doesn't know everything, you know.
So in that, he now has to confront things that, you know, determine what's true and what's not true. So he had to confront things that were, you know, uncomfortable, and maybe he was proved wrong, right? And so it led to his downfall. And so he lived this.
I'm just thinking, like, imagine I'm up into the Sphinx and I give the answer and it's right, and I explain, and the Sphinx is like, God damn it, you know, like he's right. That's like an anime answer. Like he's right, but he's wrong. You know, like it's just funny, dude. Like because he's got a boner.
Right. So that I was really impressed with your answer. I didn't want to give it away, but yeah, that was good. So you know, Nietzsche uses this example to describe what's happening in philosophy, and so let's see.
The left mind virus people could never. You know what I'm saying?
So yeah, so Nietzsche is using this example to say pursuing truth will lead to the downfall of philosophy, just like the downfall of Oedipus.
Well, what's an example of that, like today, in today's language? Like what?
Well, I mean, literally the ministry of truth. Like people are saying that's disinformation, misinformation, and like trust us. Anthony Fauci said, "Trust us. We are the science." He said, "We are the science." Like,
right.
You are not the science. Like,
right.
I looked at the data. You're wrong. You're lying to the American people. What are you talking about? Like, but like he was ordained with being the voice of truth in science, and his word was law, almost. You know,
right?
The FDA's word is law. You know, like it's a mandate. It's
So another example, which we haven't gotten the result from yet, and we might need to cut this out, but let's say the trans thing. Okay. A man can be a woman can be a man. We do it through surgery, we do it through drugs.
The results are out. The results are out. Everyone knows. I mean,
well, let's let 10 years go by. Okay. Like let's say, so in order to come up with a vaccine that is truly efficable, we have to have years and years of testing before we can be like, all right, we're going to release this to the general population, right?
But the results, like, the results are, I'm saying that I think that we can strongly say the results are out that like a man cannot be a woman because from birth, their genes are building their body differently, all the way down to their bone density, all the way down to like their genome code, all the way down to like literally their atoms. Like that's why they're called atoms, you know? So I think it could almost be considered a law that a man cannot become a woman. He can become a lot of different things. He can become a weirdo with no dick, but he cannot become a woman.
Right. So I agree. We have preliminary data and like, you know, pretty strong preliminary data that that's not true. Right. But, you know,
check this out.
We're going to see. Wait. Let me finish. We need, let's say 5 years goes down the line, 10 years goes down the line. We're going to see what effect that had, that now test of scientific truth. We're going to see what effect that had in 5-10 years from now. We'll see. We're gonna look at data. Suicide
The
rates.
effect is
goes up.
sorry. Please cut all this stuff out. But the fact is, all those trans people are going to be dead because they either died from like a health emergency or they killed themselves. So that's what's going to happen.
Data is reflecting that preliminarily now. You know,
Correct. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And another thing preliminarily is that for like 2,000 years, there's been some forms of homosexual like relations, and never once has a man-to-man relation ever caused like a baby being born. So like
Right.
we know that doesn't work that way. There's tons of data showing that. All right.
Right. And so, you know, we're on this true pursuit of truth, and what's been deemed true in culture nowadays is that a man can be a woman can be a man, and we're going to see what happens. And with Oedipus, we saw this tragic downfall, and it could be that what we've done now, currently in culture in 2024, 2020, 2016, we could see lead to the downfall, just like Oedipus. We're going to see, we could possibly see an example of that, and I think we will. You know,
do you think there's a average lifetime of these? I'm just going to call them fake truths, like the Oedipus thing and like that thing. Like, do you think there's an average lifetime of those things existing and then recognizing like that's false? We need to go back and look at the whiteboard and see where we went wrong. Like, do you think there's an average lifespan of those? What are they called? Oh, like what are we?
Common shared beliefs.
Yeah, like so is I don't know. Maybe we don't know, but I'm wondering like
Theories.
maybe there's an average lifespan behind theories like this.
I don't think there's an average lifespan. I mean, you could calculate it, you know,
like even communism, like
But-
that. didn't work
but
for a
I mean,
long
that's
period of time.
hundreds of years.
Yeah,
now,
hundreds,
you know, Nate?
yeah.
Like, I
Well,
don't think there's
look-
an average of how long they last. I think that it really depends on the culture that they exist within. Does that culture really analyze what they're
And
doing?
how many people believe it is truth?
Right. But I mean, the trans stuff, and I could be a little wrong about this, but I did read about this, is like in the past, trans stuff existed too, you know,
Correct.
and ancient history. And
No,
so,
but listen, okay, maybe we should talk about like what does that word mean? So are we saying that in the past have men pretended to be women? Is that what you're saying by trans stuff?
no, I think operative too.
Since when? Like since before the Nazis? I disagree. Operatively, I don't think like we were making trans people.
No, there was an ancient society that believed in, you know, self-mutilation and self-mutilation towards an end of maybe, you know, changing. You remove body parts.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that their ideology that didn't mean that they thought that they were a woman and that's why they were chopping off their body parts. They could have been chopping off their body parts because it was like some sort of like a different religion.
Yeah. Okay. Then what we're saying then is the belief that you can actually change. Then so that doesn't exist in ancient history, but more recent.
Yeah, for a
Male.
long time, like males have pretended to be women. Like that's like you can look at like almost all cultures. There's forms of that in their like ancient past, but they never deluded themselves. They always knew that they weren't actually women, though. You know,
Right.
Now we do. He goes, "That's a woman. He's got a dick and ball."
Sapiens, I don't know if you remember, but in Sapiens, towards the end, he literally said that you can change your sex. I believe. Did you guys catch that?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I was fucking
biology.
fired up. That's why I was like, this
But
pig is.
They're actually doing science now where they're trying to plant a uterus into a man so he can actually give birth. So we will see how that goes. Like so
This,
much.
I know we're going down the rabbit hole, but if you guys were to let's just play devil's advocate.
Crazy.
What would be the end? Like if you were running these, I'm gonna call them experiments. I know it's on human people, but what would be the end goal for all this? Like, what would be like your reasoning to do all this? Is it the
I
real
can name a
reason
few.
to like really change the sex? I think it's a darker.
I think it
it's
could.
darker.
Let me name the not so dark one. These people actually believe that they're in the wrong body and that they want to be of the opposite sex. Okay. I want to help them. Right. So we're going to do what we need to through drugs and operations to actually make that happen. So I'm coming up with some sort of methodology that can be repeated over and over again so that we can actually help these people with their issue.
Okay.
That's one.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's what a lot of, culture nowadays thinks is what's actually happening. but there are motives that are happening in the background, right? Where if we can come up with this surgery and show that it's at least somewhat possible, we can, one, make money off the operation, make money off the drugs, make money off the continual health issues that they're going to have. I don't know if you guys know who Jazz is.
The
kid that
14-year-old
ended
girl?
up changing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then she like is literally going after the
Right. They actually have to put like a plug in that thing.
Dude, it's crazy. I don't know
Continual
how to
issues that you can continue to make money off of that person as an individual. So pharma's involved in that,
yeah.
right? Big health is
Dude,
involved.
they have a lifelong dependency on big pharma. Their life revolves around big pharma. So they
There are dark, sinister things that could be happening or are happening.
Yeah.
They ensnare like lifelong victims until they die.
Yeah, I look at there was a really good podcast. A medical doctor, I forget what his name is, but he talks about this. And the first form, not the first form, but another big pharmaceutical operation experiment is obesity. Obesity was that for a long time. Right? Like look at the food system that we currently live in is to keep people like sick or fat, or so they continue to the cycle of keeping.
Robert Kennedy dreamed about the fucking outlaw poison in our foods, baby. We're so back. We're so back on that shit. Like, I'm so pumped on that shit. He's gonna outlaw poison in our foods, and he's gonna outlaw fluoride in our water. Like, I'm excited.
And the dyes, get the dyes out.
Well, that's what it means by poisons, like the dyes in our fucking on all of our food, like all that shit, like the red dye, all the stuff.
Yeah.
Drinking water is gonna be drinkable again. Fluoride is gonna be free. It's just gonna be good, bro.
Yeah, maybe at the end of the day, the reasoning is still that it's very driven by revenue for the pharmaceutical industry. No matter what way you look at it, it's just a different vehicle they're using. This vehicle is something with serious traumatic.
Oh my gosh,
like
insane. Did you guys see the newest season of Demon Slayer, the training arc, Hashira training arc?
Yes.
So the way I picture it, where let's say Big Ag creates the ingredients for Big Food sends clientele to Big Health funnels people from now that are involved in Big Health into Big Pharma, and Big Pharma now remedies that issue. In the Hashira training arc, Tanjiro and Demon Slayers start with one Hashira, just like a sensei, train. When they're done, they get sent to another. And when they're done with that next one, they get sent to another. And they're continually being developed.
Like evolving door.
We continue to push them down the line until they continue training. And so what's happening is we're seeing this Hashira training arc in culture nowadays, right? So we have food that, let's say glyphosates, right? We have pasta, bread, any of these items that require wheat are sprayed with glyphosate as a pesticide, okay? All throughout its growing period and right before harvest. That glyphosate is inside our food. That glyphosate gets put into bread and items that we eat. That makes us sick. We go to the hospital to get remedies, and they prescribe us drugs to fix those issues. Celiac disease, and now we get pushed into a different type of food. And so we're seeing this development of a chain, a link of making money, siphoning off money from people. And so we have this Hashira training arc of literally all throughout society in different ways. So
smell like bugging.
Like, man,
It's probably you, bro. You made a big
fucking ripped a fat horse pile in there. I know you did. All right, so let's continue here. So Nietzsche proposes that philosophy is a rendezvous of questions, suggesting that it is a gathering place for endless uncertainty and not for answers. Nietzsche proposes that philosophers in their search for truth might unknowingly become riddles and question marks themselves. This implies that the pursuit of truth doesn't lead to answers. It only transforms the seeker, often leaving them more uncertain and enigmatic. So by asking these questions, solving one, asking the next question, solving one, asking the question, solving one, they've not really discovered much, but all they've really done is changed themselves.
Yeah, there's an example he uses on one of these. I'm gonna look for it.
So I want to just mention kind of here's what I got after multiple reads and chat GPT assistance. So this aphorism, this is kind of what I got. So philosophers of the past pursued truth. Let's take Descartes, for example. Did you guys ever hear about Rene Descartes?
Yeah.
Okay. So he pursued truth by starting with doubt, right? The only thing that he could prove for sure, according to his paradigm, was that he was thinking. So the only thing that he could perceive is true. He based his entire existence on the fact that he was thinking. Thus his postulate, I think, therefore I am. Nietzsche is saying that philosophers like Descartes, who pursued truth, are approaching philosophy incorrectly. He questions their aim altogether.
All wrong.
And his argument is as follows. Maybe pursuing truth is the wrong approach. Perhaps untruth and ignorance could offer benefits. Truth itself could be a problem. It may not be universally good or valuable. Perhaps philosophers' questions should be aimed at themselves and not abstract ideas. The more go ahead.
Well, I mean, he's being a hypocrite in himself right now because he says the philosopher's ideas are literally a reflection of themselves. So, like, they are thinking about themselves. That's how they've made their philosophy. You know, as in his own words. I'm not saying that's true.
Right.
Just that's how he says it. So they are thinking about themselves a lot. That's how they came up with their philosophy in the first place. Sorry, you continue. That's just a thought I had in my head.
Do you think in this book, Nietzsche is going to be trying to pursue truth himself? Or do you think he's just going to be posing questions or maybe shaking your foundation is like, hey, what you determine as good and evil isn't exactly correct?
From what I understand from this book, from what I've heard from other people too, is that it seems like he's going to talk a lot and critique a lot about other people and then always kind of end it vaguely, being like, oh, who knows? They might be right. They might be wrong. I don't fucking know. Just to summarize, you know?
What a dickhead, bro.
So he's going to be a heavy regret, but at the end of the day, he's going to be like, I don't know. We all really don't know what's even the, like, quote unquote, the truth anyway. But
that's the person when you guys are sitting in a circle discussing an idea, you know, like, well, what about this? And then he just like, he's like, I don't care. And then he walks away. Like, well, yeah, I don't know. I just thought I'd ask the question.
I don't know.
You brought up the I think therefore I am thing.
Yeah.
And then there's another one which is
Where are we at?
Number one.
Well, do you want to talk about the will of nature? There's another one where it's like I think it and I will it is another thing he talks about. Okay.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Now he says those are untrue, and for these particular things, like we don't know if they are true because they are philosophies, right?
Right.
They're not even they're like maybe hypotheses, you know, which is like not even a theory, you know, because you can't even like a hypothesis is like less than a theory. I think.
Yes.
So, but like those two things, it's like I think therefore I am, and it's like I think and I will it. I think in my life, lots of times, it all starts with like I think, and then I really do will it, you know?
Yeah.
And I credit that to like, you know, the Lord give me wisdom. The Lord give me the wisdom to accomplish what I want, and He give me the power to accomplish what I want. To give me like the confidence to accomplish what I want. To give me like the power to execute what I want. The power to aim at what I want. But I have found, and I tell my students this, so like, I feel that so many things in my life, I feel like I always get what I want a lot in so many ways. Not all the time, but a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And it's because like I think it and I will eventually will it for myself. So I think for myself, you know? So, and that might not be true, but I think it's show me a better alternative to someone who's like weak and powerless. It's like, hey, if you aim correctly, you can actually make things happen for yourself. So I think it's like, maybe it's not the best, but show me some better alternatives. And again, that's not my only thing. I credit that I have the ability to do that because like I have God's favor and like I'm in a relationship with God and that like we have a contract together and that he doesn't have to help me, but like I want to be doing good and like he grants me with like wisdom and strength. Like sometimes I'm walking and a good idea just pops in my head. Like, why did that happen? You know? But it's because like I wanted to do a good thing, you know? So
Plus, like, so yeah, you know, you credit God, and then on top of that, well, excuse me, compounded with that is your mindset that you've developed in terms of how you know, your outlook on life and how you can achieve things and change life's position. You know, so it's like a compounding of those things is your mindset along with your belief in God.
yeah. I mean, like again, like there's so many things in my life where like I daydreamed about it
Right.
and then I was living it a few years later, you know?
Right. Yeah, I think,
So
you know, manifestation is a real thing, you know? If you
yeah,
think it and you work
I-
towards it, you put in the work to actually achieve it, then it's going to happen eventually.
I think so, you know? Like planting seeds.
Definitely. All right, I'm going to mention these last two bullet points that I got here, and then I have a couple questions. To paraphrase Nietzsche, the more we seek truth, the more ambiguous reasons as to why we seek truth becomes. So, you know, you ask a question, dude, in grad school, rings so true because you have a question. For me, it was, are melanges a product of tectonics or are they a product of sedimentary deposition? Okay. You ask that question. You go and you find literature to answer that question. By going and answering that one question, you've now opened up a Pandora's box of 1,000 more questions. And then you have to choose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those. You go and answer those questions. They open their own Pandora's box of 1,000 different questions. And so it just becomes more and more ambiguous. And your goal now, you can't answer all those questions. You just have to pick and choose and be kind of decisive in where you want to, you know, what you want to answer. And so by saying, you know, what he's saying, you know, the more we pursue truth, the more ambiguous it becomes. It rang true for me in grad school alone. You know what I mean? Like I could literally spend my entire life on that one project that I had in my master's thesis. You know what I mean? The one project became 2, that 2 projects became 3, and it just kept developing. And so, you know, I do agree with that in a sense. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing or the wrong approach. I just think it's something that we have to accept as part of trying to discover truth, is that we're going to develop more questions. And it's not for us to answer, it's for the next generation to answer. Yeah. And that's what's led to the development of modern day culture. Truth seeking may conceal personal or cultural biases, which influences objective reality. So science back in the day used to be religiously backed, right? Or empirally backed. So the world used to be flat, according to science, right? And the Catholic Church agreed with that. And it took a lot of convincing and a long time to come up with the idea that the Earth was round, and it wasn't the center of the universe. The sun was the center of our solar system. And so we see that, you know, we slowly develop these ideas, but you can see that science over time will reflect cultural biases. The world is 2,500 years old. Evolution isn't real. These are all cultural ideas that existed back in the day that were influenced by culture or religion and have changed over the course of time. So I don't necessarily think that truth seeking right now is necessarily a bad thing. I did want to ask you, and John, I want to hear your idea. I want you to steelman Nietzsche's argument and argue against it.
Against what?
So his argument in this first aphorism is that truth seeking is the wrong approach. I want you to steelman that, so make it a strong argument if it's not strong enough already, and then argue against it.
Steelman his argument that truth is not the right approach first, and then do the other side.
Yeah, so steelman his argument and then provide your argument. Or just provide your argument, because I think it's pretty steelman already.
Yeah, okay. Well, the steelman the other side, I would say just as being like a responsible person in your community, whether it's like in your most immediate, which is your family, or like your community, like where you live locally, or as it expands out, if you want to be a helpful person, if you are trying to pursue truth, and if you make your decisions based off of the best information possible, which is always being updated,
Yep.
then you're being, I think that like you're being civilly responsible, because you're trying to stay up to date on the information. And I think if you're not pursuing the truth, being an ignorant citizen, being an ignorant person in your community is it's a burden to your community,
Mhm.
Especially how we operate here because we're a republic and a democracy, like we vote for competing ideas, and if we're not pursuing truth, then we're not looking at things objectively. And if we're not thinking, and I think looking at things objectively is like level one of thinking. So we should all at least strive to be on level one. This is just
Are,
me personally.
are
Huh?
humans capable of objective reasoning?
What was that first part?
Are humans capable of objective reasoning?
I mean, I think so. Yeah. I mean,
Give me an example in your life of objective reasoning.
like, what do you mean? Like every day? Like, what do you mean?
Well, like you came to a conclusion somewhere in your life, right? And I want you to explain your reasoning that's objective.
Okay. Objectively speaking, people who are fat tend to eat more food and they're lacking physical mobility because of their physical stagnation. So,
Okay.
objectively speaking, I wanted I guess, objectively speaking, I wanted to fucking be more attracted to the opposite sex. So, people who are attractive are fit. So, objectively speaking, if I would like spend time working out, I would maybe look better and be fitter. The looking better part's not objectively. The being healthier part is objectively, you know?
And attraction
Uh,
to the other sex as well is subjective.
that's subjective. Yeah. Yeah. But the objective part of it is that if you do X, you become fatter. And if you do Y, you become skinnier and healthier.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, I just wanted to ask if humans were capable of that, because what
I
Nietzsche
think
is
so all the time. Like,
arguing here.
I mean, world leaders send like thousands to die at war all the time. Like they send people to die objectively, like in the grand scheme of things, like,
They send up thousands of warriors to die objectively.
yeah. I mean, like on paper, they know like people are going to die. Right.
Yeah, I think the reasoning is subjective, but objectively, like, yeah, these people are going to die.
Right.
Right. Okay, so humans are capable of objective reasoning. I asked because Nietzsche is saying, maybe he's highlighting that the way reasoning has been done up to the time of this writing, and maybe even up to modern day civilization, was laden with subjective reasoning. Whether it's religion, whether it's culture, whether it's political,
Your own bias.
your bias plays a role.
Your ego, your
Prejudices.
yeah, your own, like, I don't know, your existence,
Right.
Well, he talks about like the nature ideology, and that's supposed to be a totally objective ideology. It's all what nature wants.
Yeah, yeah. There's a good. I wish we got to part 9. There's a section. He says, "You desire to live according to nature. How you noble Stoics! What fraud of words! Imagine to yourselves a being like nature, boundlessly extravagant, boundlessly indifferent, without purpose or consideration, without pity or justice, at once fruitful and barren and uncertain. Imagine to yourself indifference as a power. How could you live in accordance with such indifference?"
Yeah, Liver King.
Mm.
Liver King.
His whole argument was like, this isn't natural. This isn't natural. It's not primitive. What is it? primal. It's not primal. That's the live with the will to nature, right?
Turns out he's on steroids.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
you know, I hope that this book isn't like highlighting just a bunch of flaws. I'd be glad to talk about the flaws, but I hope that he actually proposes solutions so that I can like argue against his points.
I don't think that's
We'll see, because chapter 2 things get a little bit differently according to some of the breakdowns. But yeah, is there anything else you guys wanted to mention?
I mean, we didn't even get past
Number 1. Number 1, bro. That's literally number 1. We had the discussion about number 1. That's why I was like, bro, reading by chapter is gonna be in. We can't
There's
do
only
it.
274 left to go.
Fuck.
I mean, what do you want to do?
we meet every weekend, every Sunday, and just do it 286 times.
You guys chose this book.
No, you did.
It was a democracy, okay? You guys have a vote.
Damn, bro. Okay, it's gonna be a big read. I think next week we do 2 and 3. We try and up it from just 1.
I guess we create like a standard, like we find big points that we know we can kind of elaborate on and don't.
Well, this wasn't even what I wanted to talk about. Jay was leading. I was like, "What are we gonna get off number 1?" I wanted to talk about a lot of other stuff
So
personally.
think about the discussion we just had. I think we hit a lot of really great, amazing discussion points.
I like it a lot.
I don't disagree.
We flowed. We didn't have really any silent time other than reading over the first part again, and we discussed a lot of important and then like unpacked a lot of like dense material. You know, so I don't think we should speed it up. I think it'd be doing a disservice, because I think naturally it will speed up, because what's going to happen is we're getting used to reading Nietzsche again, right? And the first aphorism, dense. Second one, dense. They're all going to be dense, but in terms of how we unpack it, our efficiency is going to get faster and faster, right? So it's going to be a little bit slow in the beginning, and I think that that's okay.
Look at 11.
Right. And so I think we should just roll with that, and like we're not in a rush. You know what I mean? We just unpacked a lot of good ideas, and we had good discussions. I don't think necessarily
How do we
should rush
set
that.
the readings moving forward then? Like, since we read up until part or chapter 2, how do we set, like, we're going to go over 2, 3, and 4, or like how many numbers do we go? How do we do that?
So what I think is, remember when
20.
we did the first Nietzsche book, where it was like, I miss reading a lot of material in a week.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and that's why we ended up reading Sapiens or a different type of book. I think we have to supplement our reading. Right. So like, if we're only reading this upcoming week, let's say 2, 3, and 4, and discussing those 3 in one meeting, we have to supplement our reading with like the book of Deuteronomy, if you still want to read. You know what I mean? Because it's so dense that like you can read the entire book, but ultimately our discussions are only going to be so fast.
If we go at that pace, though, are you guys? I mean, we're not going to be done with this book and straight up to like.
Well, if I
We're
think
pumping out episodes.
yeah, these are going to be episodes. So I'll go in and cut out whatever we said to cut out, like, and these will be episodes every week.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good way to do it, because instead of like, okay, we have to
Trying to
wait,
speed through it like
fucking-
Sapiens.
you know what I mean? Like,
That doesn't make sense.
it would be doing a disservice to the book, you know, and to viewers and to ourselves if we read the book fast. So we'll have to supplement reading. If you want to read more, we can do, you know, the books. The
Personally,
Bible
I
books.
like this pace because then it also pulls at our personal, like how we do go off tangents. I missed that. Like we
Yeah.
used to do that a lot. Like when we first started, we would really just ramble about random shit.
Right.
And then it'd be like, okay, we got to reel this back.
But it was all
Sapiens is like-
connected.
yeah, Sapiens felt like, or like past few books, not past few books, like Zarathustra was really good.
Yeah.
Where we can sit and think, but we also intertwine like our own way of thinking
Come
about
on,
what-
Yeah,
and
JBP.
yeah.
Mhm.
So I like that part. And then also if we recognize, and it's also good we recognize this kind of book will be fucking episode after
It'll be a
episode after episode.
Behemoth. Yeah.
You gotta drive it, Ace. Come on. You can't bring that up here. Come on.
All right.
Come on.
What I'm going to do then is
Come
I'm
on.
going to close out the episode, and we can do our post-meeting stuff and discuss what we
Come
want to
on.
do going forward. Unless you have anything else you'd like to mention. Is
Uh,
it good?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Dude, fuck it. So like we're not even gonna talk about chapter 2 next time. We're gonna talk about just aphorisms 2 and 3 next time, just to be clear.
Yes.
All right, dude. Okay. Who wants to do a second book club with me, like in between? Because like I'm gonna start reading Frankenstein then, because like We read 30 aphorisms, Jay. It's gonna take us 30 meetings to talk about this shit. Like
We're gonna be like 90 years old by the time it's fucking done, dude.
I think we could supplement with the books of the Bible.
I'm down for that.
You know,
I also am not opposed to reading like a story though, too. You know.
look, I'm not saying the page that which we're dissecting this is bad, Jay, but I'm just saying like
it's not
I'm
enough
just saying
reading.
we read chapter 1. Chapter 1 had, I'm gonna look again. It had 23 aphorisms. At that pace, it's gonna take us at minimum
23 weeks.
23 weeks. We haven't even read chapter 2 yet, bro. So like that's an unsustainable pace. I think we should go back to the drawing board about like our actual pace, because like we'll never finish the book. I will never, like, I won't read chapter 2 this year, Jay. You know what I'm saying? I'll have to wait. I'll have to wait till 2025 to read chapter 2. Okay. So,
Yeah.
I think we should go to the drawing board on like somewhere in the middle between what you're saying, because I agree, like we should talk about it. It is a disservice not to talk about it, but that is a crazy pace. But addition to that, let's read like I want to be like, fuck it, let's read Frankenstein on the side. This is like, I won't have to read for 3 months. It seems like, you know, you know what I'm saying?
That's why
Okay.
if we do decide to move out,
and me and David are already like reading, you know, Deuteronomy or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
moving at this kind of pace, I think we choose parts that we want to highlight and go into great detail, so we can cover a lot more of the book rather than going through the whole section like in fine detail. Because we're going to read it regardless, and we're going to point out what we think we can talk about, but we're not talking about everything. I think that's a good way of kind of getting through the sections. Maybe, I don't know, maybe like we.
Okay. Well, we'll get to the drawing board and figure it out. I think next week let's do aphorisms 2, 3, read, and then potentially 4 if we can get to that. But I'm going to continue doing the document like this. I think that it led to, like, the YouTube video was a good little aspect that was added to it. You know, I think that it leads to a lot of good discussion. If you guys want to do supplemental reading, Frankenstein, Dracula, the books of the Bible, we can do that. I get it. I get that it's not enough reading, right? In terms of how much we want to read a week, not enough. So I agree there. But I'm going to continue to do this development. And if we get further than 1 aphorism, 2 aphorisms a thing, and I think we will, because we're going to get more and more efficient at reading Nietzsche, then that's totally, I'm cool with that, you know? So we can discuss adding some supplemental reading once we're off the recording. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Paradyme Podcast. As you can see, this is a dense book. We're going to have a ton of videos coming out about the various weekly reading that we do. Subscribe, hit the follow, the little bell right there, so you can keep up to date with this conversation. We want to hear what you think. Did we miss anything? Do you think we covered anything well? Do you think we did anything we didn't cover anything not as good as you'd like? Drop that down in the comment box below. We'd love to interact with you and have a discussion. So again, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Paradyme Podcast. We are on all social media platforms. If you want to keep up with us, all the links you need will be down in the description below. We're on podcast platforms. Again, all the links you need will be down in the description box below. Before you take off, just remember that who you are now equals who you will be tomorrow. Peace. Subload it just like that, bro.
No, I gotta cut out that section word.
Nah, keep it. I don't give a fuck. I'm secure in my job.